Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah Martin with The Contoured Chemist. All right guys, today's Get Ready With Me day, and I'm gonna be showing you my favorite method if I want like the most natural, flawless face. This is the method I'm gonna be using. So, combination 3D and Demi Colour, and how to use them properly. There's been a lot of changes in Seint lately with the merging of the websites. And so I'm gonna kind of explain a little bit more about how to use together, what are they gonna be the permanent colors, and why those truly are the only ones you need for this method. So if you wanna check it out, please keep watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for being here. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get right on into it. I'm going to answer a lot of questions I get regarding Demi Colour as we put on our face. And especially with all of the changes that just happened, I'm going to kind of explain. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about and you are brand new to 3D Foundation and Demi Colour, I will link some videos below, kind of explain what is Demi Colour, the difference between 3D and Demi Colour, and some of those videos might be a little outdated now because the websites were just merged and they are discontinuing some of the shades so that it's no longer gonna be designed pretty much like a full face highlight and contour like 3D Foundation is. So the sculpts and the blushes and that kind of stuff, if you are already a lover of Demi, go get them while you can. The brushes are also listed as limited edition. I've heard that that means new ones are coming out, but I'm not positive on that. So if you want to snag some brushes while they're available as well, you can, and they're good for 3D as well. So I'm gonna kind of show you the two brushes I always use with Demi. The brush I use always when I'm using this method, and how best to kind of use them together, since Demi is used best for certain things and I feel like 3D is best for other things. So it kind of depends on your personal preference, but this is how I like to do it together for the most natural look, but it still looks like I've done my makeup. Does that make sense? Right? It still looks like I'm a better version of this. I'm still correcting all this I got going on in the easiest and still fastest way. Because I'll be honest, Demi, for me personally, with my skin tone and my concerns, was not fast for a full face. And 3D always was the faster option. But this to me is like the best of both worlds. I truly can get the most natural look using them both in a specific way. So I'm gonna shut up. Let's get started. All right, I have my 3D foundation here. I am still using the exact same colors I normally do when I'm just doing a full face. I'm just not gonna need as much of my color corrector, since a lot of those areas I normally use my color corrector on, I'm gonna use Demi Colour. But I'm not gonna put Demi Colour down first. And so this is one of the most main questions I get is, can I use Demi, okay, for color correction? And the reason I say no is because let's say this spot, for example. If I was to use Demi Colour on this spot first, and then I was to apply my 3D foundation like normal, what are the odds that it's actually gonna stay put right where I put it? It's gonna be very hard. I would almost have to kind of like try to apply around it. And I've got more than just this spot. I have a lot of concerns, I like to call them. So the whole premise behind Demi Colour was not necessarily color correction, but color solving. We're using color science so that there's no texture when you're applying these creams properly. But if you were to apply Demi Colour to this spot to where it disappears, and then you were to put 3D foundation over it, you're not only going to probably move Demi Colour because it's a very precise application, but you're also going to see the texture of Demi Colour because this will show textured when you apply it over it. Does that make sense? Like, it's impossible to apply 3D foundation over these creams without, again, then seeing the texture of the foundation, okay? This is amazing because there's nothing else like it that will literally show no texture, again, if applied properly. So when I think of this hybrid method of using them together, I think I'm never layering the two, okay? So you always want to think, okay, how can I apply this so I do as little layering as possible, which is why I always pick a brush that's going to give me the lightest hand, because in a lot of these areas, 3D foundation will truly give me better coverage. You can tell today, my rosacea is a little bit more than some days, since it does fluctuate, and 3D foundation can truly get rid of it like this, like really quick, really easily, using very little product. But if I was to use Demi with a large area of redness, it is much more time consuming. And this is one of the biggest misconceptions with Demi is that, so I've always called it redness because it's rosacea and we see that as red. You know, we always are like, okay, we got broken capillaries, redness here, that's red, right? But in Demi world, it's actually not red because you're looking at excess color. And this is actually purple, excess purple. True redness, in fact, I don't have any good examples, would be like the most red would be these blemishes here, but they're still not, do they look like a stop sign on my face? No, they're not true red. So unless you see something that looks like stoplight, or not stoplight, stop sign, stoplight too, I guess, they're both red, that red on your face, you won't use green, which is in color science, opposite the color wheel. Oh, you can see my reflection. Opposite the color wheel, and actually use a pure green on that spot. I rarely ever use green on my face unless it is a brand new, very angry blemish. But I get a lot of people who are trying to use Demi and they have a lot of redness and they're trying to take a lot of green to their face and they're wondering why they're getting texture. That is a color thing. You have to pick the right color in order to see no texture, and you have to apply very, very little in order to see no texture as well. If you over apply Demi or you're picking the wrong color, you will see texture. So there's certain areas that are just easier to use 3D foundation on, and one of them is, for me, I have a lot of hyperpigmentation because I'm fully freckled and I've got a lot of rosacea. So to me, it takes me a 1/10 of the time to take my normal color corrector over those areas. And then I'm truly concentrating the Demi Colour in areas where I have texture, okay? So in order to get the most flawless, which is why I call it flawless, technique, you can use 3D foundation everywhere where you don't have issues with creasing or excess texture, pores. Under eyes are a huge one. So under eyes are a big concern for me. And I actually do have eye dermatitis. So like when it flares up, my under eyes are peeling and flaking. And when that happens, I can't wear 3D. It doesn't matter how much moisturizer I use or how much I try to exfoliate and try to get off that dead skin and get it to look smooth. As soon as I apply this, I will see texture, okay? The only thing I can use in those circumstances is Demi. It truly will not increase the look of texture, unlike normal makeup will when you see makeup texture hitting those dry areas. So if you have areas like that, Demi will be your best friend, okay? So the most common areas are definitely gonna be around the eyes, around the nose. This area right here tends to have a lot of texture, sometimes even right here, and usually that's just an exfoliation issue. So if you're seeing texture here with your contour or here, you just need to exfoliate more often. every 3 days, like clockwork is what I do. And then blemishes are number one. I've never seen a product in all of makeup creation that I've ever used. I don't care what it is, concealer, like a liquid foundation, a powder foundation, nothing has ever been able to cover a blemish and not shown texture, in my opinion, until I've tried Demi. And so I will not put, I don't even like to cover blemishes with this. If they are like an actual blemish, like these little things, these will get covered no problem. But when I have like a big blemish that then like, then it starts getting like dry and flaky. You can't put makeup on that. It'll never look good, but it'll virtually disappear with Demi Colour. Okay. So think of those high movement areas, like where you're always blinking here. If you're having creasing issues here, you might need to kind of tweak your technique and try Demi Colour around the eyes. And again, if you have a lot of blemishes, even some scarring, can sometimes be better covered with Demi. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I recommend trying this technique the first time. So we're gonna skip those areas, and I wish I had a big zit where I could show you guys, but I did have a blemish in the middle of my hyperpigmentation spot this morning. So there you go. But my nose is a great example because it's like, I've got a lot of darkness, a lot of redness here, but it takes me a long time to use Demi Colour in an area that has so many different colors, okay? So also take a look at your face. Demi does take some trial and error. I am not gonna lie, it takes some practice. If you have a very like even skin tone, you just get a blemish here or there, it's gonna be so easy for you to learn. If you're like me and you've got rosacea, hyperpigmentation, under eye circles, blemishes, all of the things, and you have a lot of color, it's gonna take you a little bit longer to learn for your face. Now, I do feel like the easiest way is to kind of dip your toe in it by trying it with your 3D foundation first. I honestly feel like most people try that. They love it. And then on those no makeup days where you're like, I don't want to do, and you just have a blemish, I literally just grab this, might fix a blemish, put it under my eyes, and I might cover this. And then I don't do anything to the rest of my face. And it gives me that confidence to leave the house virtually makeup free. Okay. Number one, if I'm going to be using this technique again, like I said, I want the lightest hand possible of 3D foundation. Okay. Because I truly feel like Demi looks best when the rest of your face is not heavy in any way. So granted, that is the way I like to wear my makeup. I know that is a personal preference, but when you're applying Demi under the eyes and the rest of your face has on 3D foundation and it's heavier, it truly looks sometimes like you just forgot to do under your eyes, because Demi will look like you're not wearing anything at all. It is virtually undetectable by the naked eye. It looks incredible, and it still shows some of those natural color tones, those variances in your skin. So it's not going to be like you're just blocking out this entire color like with a color corrector like we do with 3D. You'll still see some of that variation, but if you see no variation anywhere else, it can look off, okay? So this is why I say switch up your brush, okay? You guys know me, I normally like to use the blush bronzer brush, but this will pick up more product, okay? The blend brush truly will not. It is all in how you use it, in my opinion, but this will give us the lightest, most natural hand when using 3D foundation. Now, I don't feel like this brush blends out product very well. So the dot method where you're like tapping on in one spot and then trying to blend with this is harder, because this end is more dense. It will move the product easier, but this is such a loose bristled brush. It truly is best to apply with it. Does that make sense? So instead of dotting it all over my face, I'm just going to kind of tap in with one side of my brush. And you guys, this brush, I know it's kind of hard to see. I probably should have washed it first. This brush picks up so very little product. I don't recommend swiping. I never recommend swiping, but just by kind of tapping it in, and you'll see I don't even have like a full pan, just kind of tapping it in and then just kind of sweeping it over those areas. Okay. So obviously my skin turns more red when I touch it, but, I know how very little it will take, so I don't have to. I'm telling you, with this method, even, I always say less is more, even more so, less is more, okay? So you're literally just going to match those darkest points. We're kind of evening out just with the lightest touch of that, okay? And you really shouldn't be able to see it truly look any darker, even though this color is dark for me. It shouldn't look like I just put a whole lot of color on my face, okay? We're keeping it as light as possible. Same thing here. I'm just going to, and when I say just kind of lightly distribute that product, this is what I mean. This makeup is all about how much you use, truly. Okay, so my nose, you can tell, is the darkest part of my face. It can be very time consuming for me to use Demi on that just because it's the hyperpigmentation on my nose that is making it so much darker. And so to use Demi on something like that, I would have to spend a lot of time going to every darker spot to kind of filter that, okay? I don't want time consuming. I still want fast. I just want a more flawless fast, right? Not too much to ask. So I'm going to switch to this side so I can get a little bit better coverage. Now, depending on your nose, you might choose to just completely skip this area. What is that called? The nasolabial folds, I think. That area is notorious on almost every one of my clients that it's normally broken capillaries, and you just naturally have more texture. I think it just like dead skin tends to collect there. And I know I truly make it a habit to make sure I exfoliate that area as well as I possibly can every time. And it still gives me more texture than anywhere else on my face. So I know I'm not alone. You can just totally skip that area, okay? Now, if it bothers you, if it's a lot darker and you don't want to be super precise with Demi, you can just use your 3D. It is totally personal preference. So for me, I'm going to kind of use my mango color corrector on the side of my nose here, but I am skipping all of this that I normally correct with my 3D foundation, okay? But I am gonna go all the way up here, so that way all this blue and purple right here, I can use Demi on. Does that make sense? Okay, but this darker area, I'm gonna use 3D foundation on. So that way it's corrected and I can put my lighter 3D to brighten that back up. It's so much easier than to try to filter each spot, okay? Again, I'm going for fast and flawless. Okay, since I'm darker all the way down through here, I'm just gonna pull that. Okay, and then I'm gonna kind of skip most of this so I can show you, okay? It's still darker in there, but we can use Demi there, and so we can see the least amount of texture when we're done. So I did it really lightly, so obviously I did not get full coverage there on those blemishes that were there when I woke up this morning. So I will show you how we can get rid of those with Demi. If you want truly the least amount of texture, this is what I would recommend, was just kind of matching the darkest points, so then we can then go in with our main shade and kind of bring it all together, stay matching, build up coverage, but still in a very natural way that we can still see our skin. Because to me, that is when I like my makeup the most, is when I can still see my skin shining through. I just am not seeing all the things I don't want to see. Okay, when it comes to eyelids for me, I have the most issues. If I try to use Demi on my lids, I never like the way my eyeshadow looks. So I am going with 3D. Okay. Just go with what works for you. Okay. I'm skipping the inside corner and I am using 3D on my lids because it takes me 2 seconds to even it out. And I've got a nice base for eyeshadow later. I did already prime my lids because I have to. I just have such hard eyelids when they're oily, they crease, I have a lot of blue and purple and all these different tones, and they're very fair because obviously I'm a self-tanner, but I don't tan my eyelids, you know? So to me, it's just easier to even them out with my color corrector. So I also want to make it a point that if you have any hyperpigmentation that's kind of like mine, that isn't necessarily like one big dark spot like this, but just kind of like over a large area, it is less time consuming to just kind of take a wash like I did of something like this and kind of just quickly even it out. Like sometimes around my mouth, I have kind of some darkness that shows, and it evens it out really quickly and easily instead of pinpointing the darkest points with Demi. So for larger areas like this, truly you can get better, I don't want to say coverage, but you can get it to filter completely where it disappears with Demi. But for over a large area where it's not like distinct dark points, I'd say 3D foundation, something like Mango, to kind of even it out where it's just no longer apparent, is the easier way to go. I hope that makes sense. Again, it kind of depends on your face, depends on the darkest points, depends on the look you're going for, how much coverage you're wanting, so many factors, okay? All right, so you can tell I already look like I have a little bit of coverage, but it's still pulling darker than the rest of me. So I'm gonna go same brush, just gonna go with my main shade now. And again, I'm just tapping in, okay? Barely tapping. Now, anywhere I didn't apply my color corrector, I'm gonna kind of swirl my brush, which I normally don't swirl or buff on the face unless it's my first kind of layer, right? But I want to keep it as natural as possible. I just kind of want to get a nice thin wash of that highlight so it kind of evens me out without too much coverage, just showing my skin through it. Now, anywhere I did put that color because I had redness, I'm going to simply just kind of tap, just barely. I don't want to move that color or suddenly I'll be mixing colors and suddenly I won't be getting the same coverage because my main shade does not cover redness, okay? It doesn't really cover hyperpigmentation well at all either. Under eyes, none of that, but my color corrector does. So if I move that and I mix them, I'm making a different color, and the color corrector is what has those true undertones to color correct. My main shade doesn't. When you mix them, it won't anymore, okay? It just makes a new color. So the true magic is understanding how to use them together without moving them around in order to get that kind of coverage that's still letting your skin shine through, okay? And it's all in the amounts you're using and the colors you're using, truly. Okay, so where I didn't apply, see, and I look even, right? Good coverage, but I haven't even got to the secret sauce yet, to where I really can let my skin shine through. Okay, I'm gonna go to my forehead next because that's easiest. And up here, I usually completely skip, I'll be honest. I don't really have a lot on my upper forehead that I need to correct. And I have the least amount of redness on my forehead. So I just kind of barely tap. Again, that's for my face. My face does not, I don't have as many issues up there. It's all down here. Okay, so but above my upper lip, I did color correct a little. So I'm just gonna tap that on. Okay, so here, it's really hard for me not to go all the way to the eye, but I am skipping all this. I do have hyperpigmentation, if you can kind of see like where my actual eye socket is, okay? That's truly a place that in a lot of people as we age, that there's just a lot of arteries and stuff through there that tends to make hyperpigmentation pool, and that pigment will collect there, which is why a lot of people I color match have a spot in the exact same place I do, okay? So you can go in with that color corrector, and again, if it's a large area like that, kind of just even it out and then kind of just tap over it. And I'm still skipping all this under eye up here that actually is where I'm going to crease, because if you look where when I smile, where do I crease? It's on up above this eye socket, okay? But on this literal bone, it really doesn't move that much. So again, think about where your skin is moving or your facial movements are, and those places that don't move as much. 3D is still a great option depending on the coverage and your specifics. So I'm still trying to kind of avoid this spot because I know I'm going to be putting Demi there. But through here, I did have redness, so I'm just going to tap it on. Okay, and I want to build up a little bit coverage there. I do have hyperpigmentation right here, which is why it looks like I have a shadow before I contour. So I do kind of just even that out. Now it's not like dark enough like spots like this that I could use Demi to filter that out. And I know I'm going to be contouring there. And sometimes when you have hyperpigmentation and you contour in the same spot, it truly just makes the dark spots stick out more. It is all about method in that way. Sometimes you just have to correct and layer a little bit so you get a little bit more coverage to begin with. And then when you contour, I'll show you, you just have to contour in a different way so you're not moving that underneath. Or you can contour and then you can go back at the very end and be like, okay, I got one dark spot sticking out, and then you can filter that with Demi. Okay, so on this side, same thing. I'm just gonna kind of tap it on here. And I'm barely tapping in, guys. I'm just doing this. Like with the lightest touch, I'm barely touching it. I'm not getting much product on the brush. Again, it's all about how much product you're applying. And with the right colors, you guys, you truly should need so little product. So if you feel like you're having to use a lot of product to get coverage, that is the #1 issue if you have the wrong shade, okay? If you're using a shade too light, you will be constantly trying to build up coverage and not be getting the coverage you want. So that's a red flag, just a heads up. So I'm gonna do the same thing and kind of flip around to the small side for my nose again, because again, it's darker on this side and I truly just want to kind of slim it. So I'm gonna press on. So this is a great way that you can kind of control the coverage on your full face. Like you don't have to apply it in the same method on your full face. If you have areas that you don't have any issues and you just want your skin to shine, use a lighter handed brush, you know? Then if you have areas like me, like I want more coverage on my nose. I don't want my the darkness shining through. I really don't care about my skin shining through so much on my nose. You can switch up your technique. You don't have to use the same technique on your full face. Okay, so there you go. So far, all I've done was use my color corrector and my main shade as light as hand as possible, skipping areas with more texture that I'm going to use Demi to kind of filter out, right? Simple enough. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and contour same way I always do, using the detail brush. This is not my favorite brush to contour because our contour is so dry. I like a brush that I can press on the contour and press and blend by pressing instead of sweeping, okay? And since I was very strategic on where I was placing color, this brush, you can't really press. It just isn't made that way, okay? So I always use this because again, this brush doesn't blend very well. I know it's called the blend brush. I didn't name it. It is truly best for light-handed highlight coverage, okay? But for contour, this is my ride or die. Detail all the way, and I apply it in the same way, okay? So I'm gonna go sideways into my contour color. Okay, I'll go ahead and do the forehead first because it's the easiest. So I'm just gonna kind of press along the hairline. Remember, our contours are dry, so these you can really pounce in to the 10s with a lot more pressure than you have with the highlights. Okay, and then I just kind of push up into the hairline and then pull down into the highlight so that I get that nice blend, that ombre, no crazy lines, right? Good. So we're framing out the face. Now we can kind of lift our cheekbones. So like I was sharing earlier, applying contour, if you have hyperpigmentation there, you might think, oh, okay, I will filter that with Demi and then I will apply my contour. But it will be impossible to apply contour and not move Demi Colour. It's not gonna work. It would be extremely hard unless it's like way down here and not where you're applying contour, okay? So my recommendation for applying contour is pressing to blend so you're not doing this motion, okay? This motion will move everything underneath it, okay? But if you truly just kind of press it right up underneath that cheekbone, okay? Stopping about right here, okay? Just keep pressing and kind of lift your brush up towards your temple as you're pressing. Okay, it's not gonna move all those colors you just placed and you're still gonna get a nice blend going up because we don't wanna pull it down. Okay, same thing. Okay, I'm gonna tap towards the corner of my mouth, stopping about the corner of my eye, and then just keep tapping. Okay, now I'm gonna start pulling the brush upwards as I'm pressing. Okay, and that's it. Then you can go back to that highlight brush, and if you truly wanna kind of blur out edges, just kind of lightly take your brush around. Kind of like a little magic eraser, okay? Under the jawline is pretty easy. Kind of blend down the neck. Okay. I am not gonna contour my nose this time, guys. So when I use this method, I mean, I guess I could, but I tend to not even use a brightener, which I know is kind of crazy because I usually always recommend 3 shades to everybody. But I truly feel like I want it to look so natural. And once I use this under my eyes, I don't know, it's hard to explain until you compare like a full 3D face to a hybrid face when you use it under your eyes, that you get that natural brightness that you just don't need an additional, it like lights up under your eyes. It's hard to describe, okay? So I tend to just skip the brightener, honestly. It saves me a little bit of time because I know that this part does take a little bit longer than to just take my color corrector and mane and brightener and sweep it under my eyes and call it good. But it truly gives me a much more flawless look. All right. The point normally in my foundation that I would brighten, bronze if I want to, perfect, and blush. Okay. You can still bronze if you want. So I'll just do it real quick. So I'm going to take the blush and bronzer. I'm going to take the bronzer brush. And I'm just going to kind of swirl. This has been my go-to lately. Into Glow Illuminator, Bella Bronzer, and just a touch into Heat Wave. So I'm just going to kind of swirl. And since I'm not going to brighten, I'm not going to do the high points of my face like I normally would and then brighten. I'm just going to act like this is going to stay brightened. So I'm just going to do like right there so that the center of my forehead stays light and bright, because I'm not gonna put a brightener. And it almost kind of works in the same way because you're adding warmth here, but this stays bright where you already used your main highlight, okay? So I'm just gonna follow it down on the cheek. Okay, kind of makes adds just a touch of warmth there to your contour, makes your cheeks pop a little bit more. Okay, and I like to do this before I use Demi because, again, I haven't covered that spot yet. And I want to do that very last so that any brush going over it doesn't move the product. Okay, a little bit on my nose, chin, and then of course always down the neck. Can't wait to get the new colors and try it with one of those new illuminators. I promise if you were hoping that was this video, I haven't gotten them yet. As soon as I get them, I will share. You guys know I'm dying. I'm dying to try them. Okay, so even though I have such a light hand and I feel like my skin is already shining through and I really don't need this, I'm still gonna use it, okay? And you gotta use it before Demi or it will pull off Demi. I don't recommend using it over Demi. So I'm just gonna do this just to kind of press what I do have on in the skin, make it look a little bit more natural. And like, I have nothing collected right there because I totally avoided that space. I could totally do that too, okay? And I don't have to go under my eyes really because I haven't put anything there yet. So there you go. Okay, so I do that before blush though, because this tends to kind of pull off blush a little bit. And since our blushes do kind of die down a little bit, I hear all the time, like, I can't see my blush. Okay, I always recommend putting it on after the perfector. That way you can apply it, finish up your makeup, and if it dies down a little bit, you can even apply a little bit more if needed. So I am gonna put on some of the two new shades I do have. So, oh my gosh, if I can remember, this is Seint IIID and this is Carousel. So I'm gonna layer, of course. And I'm gonna go ahead and do my blush first so then this guy won't get disturbed by it. All right, so. Okay, apples of the cheeks on up that contour. This is Seint IIID. And then I'm gonna top it with Carousel, which is the more frosty shade, just so it gives a little bit of glow. Okay, and I am pressing this on so it doesn't move any of that I already placed. The cool thing is with this method, I don't even use a powder. So I normally always powder about this step to kind of make sure I don't get any creasing, but I've used so little product here. I'm not like overly shiny because I'm not, again, too heavy-handed. I haven't put anything here that's gonna crease. And when I use Demi, you use so little product, you also don't crease. So I don't use any vanilla dust in this method. So just a heads up on that. You totally can apply illuminator. Since I'm not gonna be applying any Demi in that area, I'm just gonna put a little bit of Angel top of my cheekbones. Let's go ahead and do lips. I'm gonna use the same contour to line my lips real quick. Okay. That Summer Love and then topped with Carousel. Okay, quick brows before we finish our face. Okay, I lied. I forgot. I do set my eyelids with powder. Otherwise, I'll have creasing. So I did do that. But look, I have not even used Demi. And it's already, I'm like, I would probably, well, I don't feel complete, but still so good with just 3D. All right, so haven't seen all the recent changes with Demi. Like I said, the sculpts went away. They are still, I think, some available, but the sculpts and blushes are now limited edition, and a lot of the other shades. I think there was 50 some shades originally. Okay, I have had this compact with the colors I think over the, I don't know, the past 6 months or so, these are the only Demi colors I use on a daily basis. And it's funny because when I looked at which ones were permanent, it was all of these, okay? I truly feel like, I'm not saying these are the only ones your face would need, but I'm saying that the ones they chose to be permanent, as far as filtering goes, truly it makes the most sense, okay? So it is now to a point where the permanent colors are going to be filter only. So whether you have blemishes, hyperpigmentation, dark circles, redness, aka excess purple, broken capillaries, that kind of thing, the permanent collection shades will be able to filter those for you, okay? But that means you can use your 3D foundation, contour, lip and cheek, all of those in conjunction with these in order to perfect your look and however you want, all right? Now, the brushes are some of they originally told us they were staying, and then they said they're limited edition. So I think they're coming out with new ones, but I'll be honest, these are the only two I use. The Spot and the Bright brush are the only two, and the only ends I use are these two, okay? So if you have the multitasker, it is so similar. It's not exactly, but it is very similar to the Spot brush, and it can be used in the same way. You truly just need a very tiny point. And I feel like one of the biggest issues I see with people learning Demi is that they're trying to apply the product over a large area. And so if you've watched the original training tutorials and stuff, you'd see everyone's like, is it larger than a sesame seed? If so, it is always more than one color. Like this might look like more than like one color. Maybe it doesn't, because I do have a blemish in the middle of it today, but I use multiple colors in order to get this to filter. And I find that's one of the biggest mistakes with Demi, is that you're trying to, or some people are trying to put one color along their entire under eye, kind of like we used Mango or Frenchie to color correct with 3D, and it just does not work that way. It's going to show texture in those areas that don't need that color. So you truly have to think color to color only, and you want to use the smallest amount of product. And when I say small, I'm talking like if you can see the color on your brush, you have too much. So I see a lot of people and they go in with like this. Can you see that? Okay. You can actually see it on my skin when I put it on there. That's too much. That could literally probably do my full face of how very little Demi you use. I've had these for over a year. They don't look like they've been touched. Okay. So truly, I mean, there's still so much on my brush that I could use, which is why I do recommend the Shadow Switcher, what's it called? Brush cleaning tile, to remove excess in between. Truly, you almost look like you're wiping it off. If you can see the color being actually put onto the skin, it's too much, okay? You need to kind of move it around or touch the back of your hand, get off a little excess, and then go back in. All right, so I will be honest, one of the hardest things for me, I feel like, as an artist, is to actually show Demi on camera. It's hard to see. It's really hard to recognize color on the screen, on the phone, on the video, as it is in real life. Truly, the only way you can learn Demi is by trial and error on your own face, learning what colors your own face has. So I can give you a starting point, and I can color match you to Demi and give you a direction to go to, but I truly won't be able to see, even through a photo, your exact true tones, because even lighting, it can be so, it's not like 3D foundation. It's just completely different. So Demi is not so cut and dry to where it's like, no, you have to use this, and this color. Like I can probably do my full face with just a few of these colors, okay? Like I don't necessarily need all of them. And I can still get a very similar look, okay? So one little color is not gonna completely change your look. Does that make sense? So I normally always use the spot brush for any blemishes or dark points. Like it has to be. Anything larger than the multitasker is too large, okay? If you've seen some of Kara's videos, she uses a brush like this. Look how tiny that is, okay? I literally got a set off Amazon, and I believe there's some in the works that will be similar to this, which you can tell are just way smaller than the original spot brush, okay? And you might be thinking, holy moly, that looks way too time consuming to use a tiny little brush like that. But it truly isn't about the brush size, it's about the amount you're using. And I feel like most people's issues when they're learning Demi is that they're trying to apply it almost like 3D amount wise. And we always are stressing how varied a use of 3D, but Demi is like in a class by itself. It's like so minute that you use to truly see the magic of it. It's hard to describe and it's hard to show. And so a tiny little brush like this just can't pick up the same amount as even the multitasker. It's just, this is a much more dense brush. And so that can be part of your issue, okay? So if you see the color going on the skin, you need to try to get less on the brush or tap on the back of your hand first. So I kind of wanted to show you guys, I don't know what you'll be able to see on camera. I know it's really hard to see. So, okay. So I kind of mentioned earlier, this isn't stoplight red. And now, I mean, it's even less so, but I think you can kind of see how it's still a darker point on my face, right? Can you guys see that? Okay. So this is a blemish, but it does not need green, straight green. It does not look like a stoplight. Where I would start with this is probably, I'm like, okay, that is excess purple. And I know that because of, again, it's not stoplight red, okay? Does not need straight green. Now there's just going to be a green. There is no yellow green. In fact, I don't even have green in here. This is GY1. When something looks red-ish, okay, and dark, okay, where that's like a dark point on my face, red and blue, okay? Dark is blue, okay? Red and blue make purple, okay? That's why most of the time when we're seeing those dark areas, it's actually excess purple. And sometimes if it's dark enough, it's just straight excess blue. You'd be surprised at how much of my face is actually excess blue. So I'm gonna start here with Y01, okay? And when your Demi Colour, you use so very little that over time you're gonna notice it gets dry to where it might not even be picking up on your brush. So just kind of tap into that top just enough to where you're like, okay, I'm getting some on my finger. I've kind of removed that dry top layer. And that way, when you dip in, you are getting very little on your brush and you're not just like, am I even getting any? Okay, so I'm gonna attempt to show you guys as I look in the mirror. I mean, I feel like I already can't see it on the camera anymore. But it didn't look like I even applied anything. And I used that little brush and there's nothing left on the brush. Okay, so when I say very little, like I don't know if you guys can see that. That's how much I used for that spot, okay? So less is more when it comes to Demi. So I got another one right here. I'm gonna use the same color because it's about the same depth. It's not super dark, but it still's got a little titch of redness looking to it, which means it's purple. Now the great thing about this itty bitty brush is that I can touch just the blemish. And if I was to have a really large blemish, you guys, when they get large, that means it's bigger than a sesame seed. You might have multiple colors to where the very center of it might be stoplight red and might need a titch of green. But then as it gets like around it, it might be turning more dark, more purple. And you might need to go to that yellow orange because it's got both the yellow for the purple and the orange for the darkness or the excess blue. And then you might need just straight orange if it is dark and getting darker and darker as it's healing. So when somebody asks me, well, what do I need for, can I just pick up one color for a blemish? I'm usually, it's never one color that's gonna get rid of all your blemishes. I would say the color I use the most is probably Y01, but as they're healing, I'm gonna use less yellow and more orange. So I'm gonna move from the Y01, which is yellow orange one, to just the straight orange one, just straight orange, because it gets dark as it's healing. And again, everybody's blemishes are also different and they look different maybe as they're healing. Maybe yours don't turn into hyperpigmentation, like post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. PIH is usually when you get a blemish and it turns into just a dark spot. Like I've had one here for the last 3 weeks because of a blemish that just turned into a spot of hyperpigmentation. Those, if you get those type, you are gonna need oranges to filter those out, okay? So again, it can vary person to person as well. If yours don't get red and angry, you might never need a straight green. You might just need yellow orange or the orange for when they're in that stage. So again, that can vary. That's why I rarely say you can just pick one shade of Demi to try. Same goes for under eyes. I use probably 4 shades underneath my eyes in different points, and it depends on your under eyes. So let's go, and I am going to, let's see, I'm going to go to the spot brush because I always say you kind of want to match the, like I could probably use this brush, which is a little bit smaller. It's got a finer point. But for my under eyes, I do use this spot brush. I use the spot brush pretty much anywhere on my face, okay? But then under eyes, you gotta be careful because even this spot brush can pick up too much product. But here you can see I've got a really dark point and it's just literally the exact same size as this brush, which is why I can easily use this brush, okay? And it might be hard to tell on camera exactly the tone because on camera it looks very dark blue, okay? So excess blue, which would mean I would need orange. And sometimes in real life it looks more purple, but you know what? It's at a depth. If you look at it compared to the rest of my face, it's one of the darkest points of my face. And I actually go up to 03 in order to get rid of it, okay? I used to use, before we got 03, I used 01 and it did fine, but it tended to pull a little cool looking, a little chalky. And that's a good sign for you that it's just a little bit too light and you need something darker, okay? So again, I'm gonna kind of tap into this one because it's a little dry, okay? And I'm gonna use just the very point of my brush, so make sure I don't get too much. Okay, and I'm trying to really show you guys how very little I get. Can you even see that? Hopefully, just a little bit, okay? And then, okay, do you see how when I touch that, I actually can see it? It's okay. but then that's too much. So I'm gonna tap on the back of my hand, remove all excess, which you can see I don't know if you can see that. I had some excess. This is plenty now for that entire area. So I'm just gonna kind of move it. Like I'm almost wiping it off, but I'm just moving it specifically to where it's needed. Do you see how that spot disappeared? It truly is magical, guys. If you have the patience and are willing to learn something unlike anything else in the world, it is remarkable. It's just disappeared. And now I just have one on this side. Now, the point right next to it, right in here, isn't as dark, but you can probably tell it's more blue, but it's not as deep. It's not as excess blue. It's just a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna go in with 01 instead of 03, okay? And if you look at the difference, this is 03. 03, I would say, is the closest thing to Magic Mango or Frenchie. It's at that depth, okay? 01 is a little bit lighter. It doesn't have as much orange in it. I cannot look in the camera. I have to look in my mirror. Okay. And then suddenly that blue is gone. Okay. So I do that on the inside corners. And then when it comes to under eyes, I would say be patient. Under eyes to me was the hardest part to learn, to not just want to go really quick all over one color, because that's what I was used to. But realizing that I don't have to cover every color under my eyes. There's a natural variation that everyone's under eyes have, and it's okay to not filter everything you see. Only what's distracting, okay? So always look for the darkest points, okay? So for me, I hit those in the inner corner, and then I go and I'm like, okay, what's the next darkest point? And you can probably tell it's like right in here, and it goes down through here, and then I've got some out here, and those are different things, okay? So in here is still that darkness. Out here is hyperpigmentation, and then I have purple up by my lash line, okay? So again, learning to recognize your own face colors is number one when it comes to trial and error with Demi. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna say, like, also comparing what you see works to what was next to it. Like, so this I know needed 03, and comparing to see if this is like the same depth, is it the same tone? All of those things can help you figure out what to use in other areas. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. And be patient with yourself, and know under eyes are something that is affected greatly with diet, sleep, water. When you're dehydrated, when you are been up all night, your under eyes can change. I know mine can vary greatly based on my sleep. So know that every single day, it might not be the exact same. You might have darker under eyes one day and have to go up to an 03 when you normally use an 01, okay? So if you have to be able to recognize when a color is wrong. So if you're using 01, it's going chalky, it's going light, cool, you gotta go darker, all right? So for me today, I don't feel like my under eyes are as dark as they normally are. I just got some shadow right there. When I'm trying to keep it real light, I try to do more like spots with the more pinpointed brush. But when I want to just kind of filter a very small area, I feel like under eyes are the place that you can really over apply and over filter to where you're just pulling too white, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna use the bright brush, and this is because I want a really light wash just right here. And I'm gonna use very little, and I'm gonna use just a touch of that Y01 because it's dark, but it's also purple. And again, I can't see it applying. It looks like I'm almost just wiping it away. Especially with my under eyes that move so much. This is why I need mirror, closer mirror, okay. Okay, so once I do that, I feel like I eliminated some of that darkness, and then I can really see where it's still dark. You see that kind of shadow? I pick back up that spot brush. And I'm going in with 01 now because that was darker, meaning it had more excess blue in that crease. And do you see how that's gone? Okay, now I like to move my head around a lot when it comes to Demi because it can you can really see different areas. Oh, I feel like a little bit too much. Get a little too much, just tap or use your finger. Sometimes it's easier to just use your finger and it will kind of just pick up a little bit of that excess. Okay. So when I go down here, I feel like I got pretty good coverage. I don't feel like it's showing much on camera. I have a couple dark spots right through here that sometimes just kind of lend to my darkness under my eyes. So a lot of times you might not have dark circles. It's truly hyperpigmentation that's collecting here that's giving you the appearance of darkness under your eyes. And so hyperpigmentation, I feel like I have a lot of experience with because I have a lot of it. And they usually say hyperpigmentation is more green. So you need to use those reds, those pinks. And I truly feel like you have to look at the spot and try it and adjust, because for the longest time, I'm like, okay, it's hyperpigmentation. I know it's a dark spot. So I was trying to use some of these pink tones, right? And they were all pulling cool. They were all pulling too pink, too chalky. And it's because, yes, it was hyperpigmentation, but it was past the point of green. It was excess blue, okay? So there's a difference between, like, I wish I could kind of show you on my face, but most of them are pretty covered with my 3D. But I mean, when you get into these like lighter freckles, okay? On me, I have a lot of different tones of freckles. My lighter ones I can use pink on because they are straight up green and they will disappear. But those are not the ones that concern me because I have a full face of freckles. Now, if you are fairer skin and you've got those, then yeah, all you're gonna need is that that R1, R01, OR1, okay? Those will go closer to orange the darker those spots get, okay? But for me, I rarely can use those because my spots are darker, okay? So for me, this bad boy was always pulling cool until we got our newest shade, which is 03. I have to start with that. This same one over here, it might not even look very dark. I have to use 03. 01 even pulls too cool. So I don't know if you guys can even see it because I got a little bit of foundation on it. I barely had to touch that and it went away. Okay, so then I go and I look and I know it's not apparent on, so this one right here, to me, it almost looks a little green in real life, but I know my face by now, and these ones that you probably can't even see, these lighter ones are probably more green, and this is getting into orange territory because it's darker. And again, this is something that you learn almost like a color wheel for your own face. and I know my face, and I know that those are just a touch too dark for me to use just red on. Okay, so the last thing I do is go through and I'm not going at every spot. You guys, I mean, seriously, I have so many, I have so many freckles. If I was to go into every one of them, guess what? It would just lend to creasing again. So I truly am trying to just kind of correct discolorization, I don't think that's discoloration through here. Okay. Sometimes it pulls a little purple in that outside corner. So I go back into that Y01. Now, one of my greatest tricks, I feel like, with Demi is not worrying about going all the way up to the lash line, because when I put on eyeshadow, I always put eyeshadow there. And so there's no really point to trying to correct it when you're going to put another color there anyway. So skip that. You really don't have to correct all the way up to the lash line, just those areas that you find distracting. Okay, so I'm more or less going to just go repeat what I did over here to this side, but not exactly. Every under eye is different. Every area of your face is different. They're not twins, okay? They're sisters. So we're just going to use the same concepts we just did, and I'm going to do this side. Okay, so this side is my problem side. This bad boy right here is the darkest point. When looking at any spot, okay, way larger than a sesame seed, right? We're gonna hit the darkest point. Now, if you're having issues with covering hyperpigmentation, you're seeing texture, you're saying it's not covering, you're probably trying to use a color across the entire area. And I know how hard it is not to, because that's how I tried when I started as well, okay? But if I am very particular and I really am looking at the darkest point within this spot every single time I'm touching it, then I can get it to virtually disappear. I'm gonna try this itty bitty brush. I'm gonna show you guys, okay? And I'm gonna go in with 03, which is this guy. I truly feel almost every single face I've ever color matched for Demi. If you have hyperpigmentation or under eye issues at all, or blemishes, you will need 03 at some point. Like almost every single face does, okay? So I promise it's a game changer. Okay, so I'm gonna go in, and that blemish is the darkest point. And I'm just kind of tapping it on, and you can see it already made that point disappear. Now I'm going back in and I'm looking for the next darkest point. And again, I'm moving my face around because it will change depending on the lighting. Okay. The next one. And I truly feel like this works so well because you're not applying too much product, for one, and you're not applying this color to the spots that aren't as blue. And those are the parts that really show up as textured. And those are the areas that really show up chalky and making it look like it's not disappearing. Like, I wish you guys could see how very little. I'm trying to get as close to the camera as I can. This stuff is truly magical, the way it disappears, okay? That's how much I'm putting on my brush. Can you see that? Can't even see it. I'm still using 03 until I feel like all of the darkest points are like really not gone, but or I'm seeing texture or chalkiness, okay? So already that looks a million times better, right? But now I'm gonna go down one, okay? Because now I've hit the darkest points, but now I'm gonna go down to 01 and hit those slightly lighter than those darkest points, but now they're the darkest points, right? Does that make sense? Like I've already hit the very darkest points. Okay, it's almost gone. I'll be honest, most times I kind of stop here. Depends on how much time you want to spend on it. Depends on what bothers you. If you're one of those people that wants to make it like undetectable to the naked eye, just keep going. To me, this is far better than my normal day-to-day coverage, so I can still see a little bit. So now I'm gonna go to, we would go down, so from 01, then you go down to those red tones. Okay, so next we're gonna go into more towards the red side, all right? And I feel like these are always really confusing. So we have R01 and OR1, okay? Think of it as like reddish orange and orangish red, okay? So after orange, you're gonna go R01 because it's reddish orange, meaning it's mostly orange, got a touch of red, and then we get into orangish red, which is getting to red with a touch of orange, and then it goes to just R1, which is just red, okay? So you kind of want to like stair step it down like I was doing. We went with 03, then 01, now we're gonna go with OR1, and normally this is as far as I need to go, and this will kind of remove anything that's left that is typically, oh wait, no, did I say OR? God, I picked up the wrong one. R01. This is the next one. I'm gonna kind of tap it, make sure I don't have, not dipping into a dry spot. And then normally this is as low as I go and it gets rid of any of that remaining green. And if you get too much and you suddenly see the color and the texture, wipe it off, back of your hand, and then just kind of spread it out. You'll get better with application the more you do it. I think the only thing I can see is the bump of the blemish. The blemish is still protruding. Sometimes if you're bringing a lot of blood to the surface, sometimes you'd be like, I can still see it, give it a minute, let it kind of calm down. And then you can always like go to a different part of the face and then you can go back to it. So for me, I'm gonna grab this brush and I always have a spot down here that bothers me. I'm gonna go with 03. And I almost forgot my broken capillaries. Again, they're not red, they're actually purple, and they're usually dark purple. So usually people need to use Y01 or OY1, depending on how dark they are. If they're a little bit more purple, not so dark blue, start with Y01. If they're really dark, go with OY1. So I use Y01, but you want to use like, you want to get close and you want to just go directly to where you see it. Okay, friends, that's been long enough. I hope that was helpful in kind of showing you a little bit of the technique in using Demi and using 3D together. Hopefully you're able to see kind of a little bit more how you can get such a bright and natural look. So if you're having any issues with texture, whether it is from blemishes or where you're applying your 3D or not getting the coverage you want or not getting the total filtering that you want, try using them a little bit more strategically, just where you need what, and see if that helps with your application, especially if you're trying to get that more youthful, natural, glowing skin type look. I feel like the combination of these two together is truly magical and unlike any other makeup on the planet. It might take you a little bit of trial and error, but that is what I'm here for. I can match you to both and tell you what you would need for Demi and for 3D if you are brand new to either from Seint. Just let me know what you're looking for. I have a color match request in the drop box below the video that will tell me everything about how you like to wear your makeup, and so I can make the best recommendations for a custom makeup routine for you. You can have it all in one compact. I just happen to have mine separate today, but it's all completely custom. You can have what you want, what you don't want. It allows you to switch up your makeup on the daily. You can go from natural, hybrid method to full coverage the next day, however you prefer to wear your makeup that day. But if you have any questions about Seint or Demi or 3D foundation or this method, drop them in the comments below. Thank you again for being here and watching, and I love you guys.